Steve Harvey has been hosting Family Feud long enough to think he has seen it all. The funny answers, the awkward confessions, the emotional breakdowns, and the family arguments that spill out under the studio lights. But nothing in his decades of television could have prepared him for what happened on a warm Friday evening in September 2024. Because on that night, a woman walked onto his stage and came face to face with the one thing no wife ever wants to see. Her husband was already there, and he was not alone. There was a time when marriage vows meant something sacred. There was a time when the words, for better or for worse, were not just a ceremony but a lifelong promise. But when Janelle Robinson looked across the Family Feud stage and saw her husband, Derek Robinson, standing with his arm around another woman and her family, those vows shattered in front of 200 people and millions of viewers at home. What happened next forced Steve Harvey to do something he had never done in his entire career. He stopped being the host and became something the Robinson family desperately needed. A voice of reason in the middle of chaos. If you believe that loyalty and respect should still mean something in a marriage, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. Because what happens next in this story is something you will never forget. To understand the full weight of what happened on that stage, you need to know who Janelle Robinson was and everything she had sacrificed for the man she loved. Janelle was 39 years old. She grew up in a small town outside of Memphis, Tennessee, the oldest of 4 children raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. Janelle's mother, Loretta, was a housekeeper during the day and a cashier at a gas station at night. She never had a day off. She never took a vacation, and she never once let her children see her cry, even when the bills piled up and the refrigerator was nearly empty. Loretta taught Janelle one lesson above all others. She said, "Baby, when you give your heart to someone, you give it all the way. But make sure they deserve it." Janelle carried that lesson with her through everything. She put herself through nursing school while working part-time at a grocery store. She graduated at 23 and took a job at a hospital in Nashville, working the overnight shift in the emergency room because it paid a little more. That was where she met Derek Robinson. Derek was 25 at the time, a smooth-talking logistics coordinator who had come into the emergency room with a broken wrist after a weekend basketball game. He was charming, funny, and persistent. He asked Janelle for her number 3 times before she finally gave in. Their first date was at a Waffle House at 2 in the morning after Janelle's shift ended, and Derek told her she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen sitting under fluorescent lights eating hash browns. Janelle laughed so hard she almost choked. That was the night she fell in love. They married 2 years later. The ceremony was small, held in Loretta's backyard in Memphis with folding chairs and a barbecue reception. Janelle wore her mother's old pearl necklace because they could not afford new jewelry. Derek promised her that one day he would buy her real diamonds. Janelle told him she did not need diamonds. She just needed him to keep his promises. For the next 12 years, Janelle and Derek built a life together in Nashville. They had 2 children. Their son, Jalen, was now 10, a quiet and thoughtful boy who loved reading and drawing comic books. Their daughter, Zoe, was 7. A firecracker of a child who talked constantly and had opinions about everything. Janelle continued working as a nurse, eventually becoming a charge nurse in the cardiac care unit. She worked 12-hour shifts, sometimes back-to-back, to help pay for their mortgage, the kids' school activities, and Derek's dream of starting his own freight brokerage business. That was the thing about Janelle. She believed in Derek's dreams even more than he did sometimes. When he said he wanted to leave his stable job to start the business, Janelle picked up extra shifts to cover the income gap. When the business struggled in its first year, Janelle took out a personal loan to keep it going. When Derek had to travel for work, meeting clients in different cities, Janelle managed the house, the kids, the bills, and her own exhausting career without a single complaint. She was the foundation that held everything up, and she did it quietly, without recognition, because that was what love looked like to her. What Janelle did not know was that Derek's business trips had become something else entirely over the past 18 months. The late-night phone calls he said were with clients. the weekend conferences that seemed to happen more and more often, the new cologne, the gym membership, the sudden interest in his appearance that had nothing to do with impressing his wife. Janelle had noticed the changes, but she had pushed her suspicions aside. She trusted Derek. She had given him everything. The idea that he could betray her was something she simply could not allow herself to believe. Now, here is how the stage was set for what would become one of the most shocking moments in Family Feud history. Derek had told Janelle he was going on a business trip to Los Angeles for a logistics conference. He would be gone for 4 days. Janelle kissed him goodbye, packed him a bag of snacks for the flight, and told him she loved him. But Derek was not going to any conference. He was going to Los Angeles to tape an episode of Family Feud with another family. Specifically, with a woman named Tasha Morgan and her relatives. Tasha was 32, a real estate agent from Phoenix, Arizona, who had been seeing Derek for over a year. She believed Derek was separated from his wife. That is what he had told her. He said the divorce was being finalized and that he was just waiting for the paperwork to go through. Tasha had no reason not to believe him. She had introduced Derek to her family as her boyfriend, and when her family got accepted to be on Family Feud, Derek agreed to join them as Tasha's partner. He thought it was safe. Nashville and Los Angeles were 2,000 miles apart. What were the chances? But the universe, it seems, has a sense of justice. Because what Derek did not know, what he could not possibly have known, was that Janelle's younger sister, Monique, worked as a production assistant at the studio where Family Feud was taped. And on that Friday evening, when Monique saw the family lineup for the day's taping, she saw a name that made her blood run cold. Derek Robinson, listed as a family member of the Morgan family, standing next to a woman named Tasha. Monique called Janelle immediately. Janelle did not scream when Monique told her. She did not cry. She went very, very quiet, and then she said 4 words that Monique would never forget. I am coming there. Janelle booked the next flight from Nashville to Los Angeles. It cost her nearly $800 on last-minute pricing, money she did not have to spare. But she did not care. She left Jalen and Zoe with her neighbor, a woman she trusted with her life, and she got on that plane with nothing but her purse, her phone, and her mother's pearl necklace around her neck. The same pearls she had worn on her wedding day. Monique met Janelle at the studio entrance and got her inside. The taping was about to begin. The Morgan family, with Derek standing right there among them, was already positioned on stage. The opposing family, the Delgado family from San Antonio, was on the other side. Steve Harvey was in his spot, cards in hand, ready to start the show. The audience was full and buzzing with energy. Nobody knew what was about to happen. The game began normally. Steve did his introductions, working his way down the Morgan family lineup. When he got to Derek, Steve asked who he was and how he fit in with the family. I am Tasha's boyfriend, Derek said, flashing that same confident smile that Janelle had fallen in love with 14 years ago. He put his arm around Tasha's shoulders. Been together about a year now. She is the love of my life. Tasha blushed and leaned into him. The audience gave a warm, ooh. Steve smiled and moved on to the next person in line. Janelle was standing just off stage, behind the curtain, watching on a monitor. Monique was beside her, holding her hand. Janelle watched her husband call another woman the love of his life. She watched him smile like he did not have a wife and 2 children waiting for him back in Nashville. She watched the audience think he was a good man, and something inside Janelle turned to steel. The game progressed through the first round. The Morgan family won the face-off. Derek even got a good answer that earned him cheers from the crowd. He was enjoying himself. He was relaxed. He was performing the role of the devoted boyfriend just like he performed the role of the devoted husband at home. 2 lives. 2 lies. And he thought he was getting away with all of it. Then, between rounds, during a brief production break while the crew adjusted the set, it happened. Janelle walked out from behind the curtain and onto the Family Feud stage. She did not run. She did not scream. She walked with the kind of slow, steady, deliberate pace of a woman who had made her decision and was not going to be stopped by anyone or anything. She was wearing scrubs. She had come straight from the airport. Her mother's pearls caught the studio lights as she moved across the stage. Derek saw her first. The color drained from his face so fast it was like watching someone pull a plug. His mouth opened but no sound came out. His hand dropped from Tasha's shoulder like it was on fire. Tasha looked confused. She looked at Derek, then at this woman in scrubs walking toward them with tears streaming silently down her face. "Derek?" Tasha said. "Who is that?" And Janelle answered for him. She stopped about 5 feet from both of them, looked Tasha directly in the eyes, and said in a voice that was calm and clear and absolutely devastating, "I am his wife. We have been married for 12 years. We have a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. And I just flew 2,000 miles because my sister works here and saw my husband on stage with you." The studio erupted. 200 people gasped at the same time. Audience members grabbed each other's arms. Several people stood up. A woman in the back row shouted something that the microphones did not catch. The production crew froze. The cameras were still rolling because nobody had told them to stop. Tasha stumbled backward like she had been physically struck. Her hand went to her mouth. Her eyes went wide. She looked at Derek, and in that look was the dawning, horrifying realization that everything this man had told her was a lie. "You told me you were separated," Tasha said, her voice cracking. "You told me the divorce was almost final. You told me you had no one. Derek, you told me you had no one." Derek stood between the two women with his arms hanging at his sides, completely frozen. He looked like a man who had run out of lies and was standing in the wreckage that was left. His mouth moved, but for several long, agonizing seconds, nothing came out. Steve Harvey had been standing near the host podium when Janelle walked out. He had watched the entire scene unfold in real time. His producers were in his earpiece asking what to do. Should they cut? Should they go to commercial? Should they clear the stage? But Steve made a decision in that moment. He pulled out his earpiece, set it on the podium, and walked toward the center of the stage. Not as the host, as a man who knew that what was happening required something real. "Hold on," Steve said, holding up both hands. His voice was the only steady thing in that room. "Hold on, everybody. Let us take a breath." The audience quieted, but the tension was suffocating. Tasha was crying. Janelle was trembling but still standing straight. Derek had not moved. Steve turned to Janelle first. "Ma'am, what is your name?" "Janelle," she said. "Janelle Robinson. I am a nurse. I work in cardiac care in Nashville. I came here because my sister told me my husband was on your show with another woman, and she was right." Steve nodded slowly. Then he turned to Derek. The look on Steve's face was something the studio audience would talk about for years. It was not anger. It was not judgment. It was the deep, bone-level disappointment of a man who had made his own mistakes and knew exactly what he was looking at. "Derek," Steve said quietly, "is this your wife?" Derek closed his eyes. He swallowed hard, and in front of 200 people and however many million would eventually watch this moment, he whispered yes. The audience erupted again. Boos mixed with gasps. Someone yelled from the upper seats. Tasha's family members, who had been standing frozen in the lineup, started talking over each other. Tasha's mother stepped forward, pointing at Derek, her voice shaking with fury. "You came into my home. You sat at my dinner table. You told my daughter you loved her, and you have a whole family." Derek said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Steve Harvey moved to the center of the stage and took control of a moment that was spiraling. He had been in television for decades, but this was not television anymore. This was 3 real people whose lives had just been blown apart on a soundstage, and somebody needed to make sure it did not get worse. "I need everyone to listen to me right now," Steve said, and his voice carried the weight of authority and compassion in equal measure. "What just happened on this stage is not entertainment. This is real. These are real people with real feelings and real families at home, so we are going to handle this with the dignity that every person on this stage deserves. Even the ones who do not deserve it." He looked at Janelle. "Janelle, I want you to know that what you just did took more courage than most people will ever have in their entire lives. You flew across the country, walked onto a television set, and faced the worst moment of your life standing up. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Then Steve turned to Tasha, who was still crying, mascara running down her cheeks, her hands trembling at her sides. "Tasha, I need you to hear this. You are a victim here too. You were lied to. You were manipulated. The anger you are feeling right now is justified, but it should be pointed at one person, and I think you know who that is." Tasha nodded through her tears, unable to speak. Then Steve turned to Derek. The studio went completely silent. You could hear the hum of the overhead lights. Every single camera was pointed at these two men. "Derek," Steve said, and there was steel underneath the calm in his voice, "I have stood on this stage for years and met thousands of men, good men, hardworking men, men who would give everything they have for their families. And then, every once in a while, I meet a man like you. A man who had everything. A wife who worked 12-hour shifts to support his dreams. 2 children who think their daddy is a hero. A woman who believed in him enough to put her name on a loan so he could chase his business. And instead of honoring that, instead of protecting that, you stood on my stage, on national television, and called another woman the love of your life while your wife was home raising your children." Steve paused and let that sit. The audience was completely still. "I want you to look at that woman." Steve pointed at Janelle. "Look at her. She is wearing scrubs because she came straight from the airport. She did not even stop to change. She is wearing the same pearls she wore on her wedding day, and she is still standing. After everything you just put her through in front of all these people, she is still standing. That right there is strength that you do not deserve, but I pray you learn to appreciate before it is too late." Janelle, who had been holding herself together with iron will, finally let out a single sob. It was quick and quiet, and she pressed her hand to her mouth to stop it. But the cameras caught it, and that single, restrained moment of grief hit harder than any scream ever could. Then Janelle did something that nobody expected. She turned to Tasha, not with anger, not with accusation. She walked over to this woman she had never met, the woman she had every right to hate, and she said, "He lied to both of us. I have been married to that man for 12 years, and apparently I did not know him either. You thought he was single. I thought he was faithful. We were both wrong. But that is not your fault, and it is not mine. That is his." Tasha broke down completely. She reached for Janelle's hands and held them, and the two women stood there on that stage, connected by the one thing they had in common. They had both believed a man who did not deserve their trust. The audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous and emotional. People were crying openly. The camera operators were crying. Even some of the stagehands standing behind the set had to wipe their eyes. Steve Harvey watched the two women and shook his head slowly, the kind of slow shake that comes not from disapproval, but from being deeply, profoundly moved. He turned to the camera and spoke directly to every person watching at home. "This is what grace looks like, ladies and gentlemen. 2 women who were hurt by the same man, choosing to see each other as human beings instead of enemies. That is rare. That is powerful. And that is a lesson that every single person watching right now needs to carry with them. When you are betrayed, you have a choice. You can let it make you bitter, or you can let it reveal who you really are. Janelle and Tasha just showed us who they really are. And Derek, I hope you were watching, because those 2 women just showed more character in the last 60 seconds than you have shown in the last 18 months. The taping ended right there. No more game. No more questions. The producers did the only decent thing and awarded both families their appearance fees and prize money. The Delgado family, who had been standing on the other side of the stage in stunned silence the entire time, later told a reporter that they felt like they had witnessed something historic and heartbreaking and beautiful all at the same time. When the episode aired, it did not just go viral. It became a cultural moment. The clip of Janelle walking onto the stage in her scrubs and her mother's pearls was viewed over 80 million times in the first 2 weeks. News networks covered it. Talk shows discussed it. Social media exploded with commentary. But the moment that people shared more than any other was not the confrontation with Derek. It was Janelle reaching for Tasha's hands. 2 women choosing compassion when the world expected fury. That image became a symbol of something people were hungry for in a world full of anger and division. Janelle went back to Nashville and went back to work. She did not do interviews for the first month. She did not post on social media. She just kept being a nurse and a mother. She woke up at 5:30, packed lunches for Jalen and Zoe, drove to the hospital, and took care of people who were sick and scared. That was who she was, and no amount of public attention was going to change it. But eventually, she did speak. A local Nashville news station asked for a brief interview, and Janelle agreed on one condition. She wanted to talk not about Derek, but about what she had learned. She sat in her living room, her mother Loretta beside her, and spoke with a clarity that resonated with millions of people. "I spent 12 years being everything for someone who was not being anything for me," Janelle said. "I worked doubles so he could build his business. I raised our children while he traveled. I pushed down my doubts because I thought that was what a good wife does. But I learned something on that stage. A good wife does not ignore her own intuition. A good wife does not shrink herself to make a dishonest man comfortable. My mother taught me to give my heart all the way. She was right about that. But she also taught me to make sure they deserve it. And I forgot that part." Loretta, sitting beside her daughter, spoke up for the first and only time during the interview. "My baby walked onto that stage wearing the pearls I gave her on her wedding day. She walked into the worst moment of her life wearing those pearls. And she walked out still standing. That is all a mother needs to see to know she raised her daughter right." Tasha Morgan also spoke publicly a few weeks later. She posted a video that was viewed millions of times, in which she apologized to Janelle directly. "I did not know," Tasha said, her voice steady but emotional. "He told me he was single. He told me his marriage was over. I would never, ever knowingly be part of hurting another woman or her children. When Janelle walked onto that stage, my heart broke for her. And when she reached out and held my hands instead of blaming me, she showed me what real strength looks like. I will never forget that as long as I live." Derek Robinson lost everything. Janelle filed for divorce within a month of the episode airing. His freight brokerage, which had been built on the back of Janelle's extra shifts and personal loans, lost several major clients after the episode went public. Some of those clients told reporters that they could not do business with a man who would lie to the people closest to him. Derek's own mother gave an interview in which she said, simply, "I raised him better than that. Whatever happens to him now, he earned it." Steve Harvey referenced the Robinson episode multiple times in the months that followed. In a speech at a charity event, he said, "I have been blessed to have one of the biggest stages in television. Most days, we use it to play games and make people laugh. But every once in a while, something happens on that stage that reminds me why it matters." Janelle Robinson walked onto my set in her work scrubs and her mama's pearls and taught 200 people and eventually 80 million more what dignity under fire actually looks like. That was not entertainment. That was ministry. 6 months after the episode aired, Janelle and Tasha did something that shocked everyone. They appeared together at a women's conference in Atlanta. They stood side by side on stage and spoke about the experience, not as enemies, not even as unlikely friends, though they had become that, but as two women who had been through the fire and come out the other side with something valuable to say. Janelle told the audience, "The world wanted us to fight. The comments, the headlines, everyone expected me to hate Tasha and for Tasha to hate me. But we made a different choice. We chose to see each other clearly. And when you see another woman clearly, when you really look at her and recognize that she was hurting just like you were, hate becomes impossible. Compassion is the only thing left." Tasha added, "Janelle taught me something I will carry forever. She said to me backstage after the show, 'The enemy is not the other woman. The enemy is the lie,' and she was right. Derek lied to both of us. The moment we stopped blaming each other and started seeing the real problem, we became stronger than he ever was." The conference appearance led to more invitations. Janelle and Tasha eventually co-founded a nonprofit called Standing Together, which provided support and counseling for women dealing with infidelity and relationship betrayal. Within its first year, the organization had helped over 300 women access free therapy sessions and legal consultations. The waiting list grew so long that they had to bring on additional counselors. Janelle's children, Jalen and Zoe, grew up knowing the truth about what happened. Janelle never spoke badly about their father in front of them, but she also never lied. She told them, in age-appropriate ways, that their father had made choices that hurt the family, and that sometimes love means holding people accountable instead of pretending everything is fine. Jalen, who had been 10 years old at the time of the episode, later wrote an essay for a school assignment that went viral when his teacher shared it with Janelle's permission. The essay was titled, "My Mom's Pearls," and it described the moment he watched the episode for the first time, seeing his mother walk onto that stage in her scrubs and her grandmother's necklace. He wrote, "My mom did not go there to fight, she went there to stand up. There is a difference. Fighting is about anger. Standing up is about knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone take that away from you. My mom stood up, and she has been standing ever since." Years later, Steve Harvey invited Janelle back to the Family Feud stage for a special segment. This time, she walked out to a standing ovation that lasted nearly a full minute. She was not in scrubs this time. She wore a beautiful navy blue dress and, of course, her mother's pearls. Steve gave her a long hug and then held her at arm's length, looking at her with genuine admiration. "Janelle Robinson," Steve said, shaking his head. "You walked onto this stage once before on the worst day of your life, and you turned that worst day into the beginning of something beautiful. You started an organization that helps women. You raised 2 incredible kids. You showed the world what it means to lead with grace when you have every reason to lead with rage. I am proud to know you." Janelle smiled. "Steve, you told me that night to take a breath. That was the best advice anyone ever gave me. I took that breath, and I have not stopped breathing since. Everything that happened after, the organization, the friendship with Tasha, raising my kids to be honest and brave, it all started with that one breath." The story of Janelle Robinson, her walk across the Family Feud stage, her pearls catching the studio lights, her hand reaching out to the other woman instead of pushing her away, became one of the most referenced moments in modern television history. It proved that the most powerful thing a person can do in a moment of betrayal is not to destroy the person who hurt them. It is to rise above the destruction and show the world who they really are. The ripple effects of that one moment continued to spread in ways nobody could have predicted. Hospitals across the country began inviting Janelle to speak at staff wellness events, recognizing that her story resonated deeply with nurses and healthcare workers who often sacrificed their own needs for everyone around them. Janelle would stand in front of auditoriums full of exhausted nurses and tell them that taking care of yourself was not selfish. It was necessary. "I spent 12 years pouring from an empty cup," she would say. "Do not make my mistake. You cannot save anyone if you have nothing left to give." Tasha, meanwhile, became a vocal advocate for transparency in relationships. She partnered with a dating safety organization to promote tools that helped people verify whether potential partners were being truthful about their relationship status. She said in one interview, "I trusted a man who had perfected the art of lying. If my story helps even one woman ask the right questions before she falls in love, then everything I went through was worth it." The relationship between Janelle and Tasha became one of the most unexpected and uplifting aspects of the entire saga. They spoke on the phone regularly. Tasha flew to Nashville for Zoe's 8th birthday party. Janelle sent flowers when Tasha closed on her first $1 million real estate deal. They had built a friendship on the most unlikely foundation imaginable, and that friendship became proof that human beings are capable of extraordinary grace when they choose connection over conflict. Family Feud producers later said that the Janelle episode changed how they thought about their show. They implemented new screening procedures to verify contestant information and family relationships. They also created a support fund for contestants who experienced unexpected personal crises during taping. The show had always been about families, but after Janelle, the producers understood at a deeper level the responsibility that came with putting real families on national television. Janelle once told an interviewer, "My mother gave me those pearls because she could not afford diamonds. But I would not trade them for anything in the world. They were with me on the best day of my life and the worst day of my life. And both times, they reminded me where I come from and who I am." If this story moved you and reminded you of the power of dignity, grace, and choosing compassion over anger, Make sure you hit that like button right now, subscribe to our channel, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss another incredible story. We bring you the most powerful and unforgettable Family Feud moments every single week. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.